Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to our viewing audience across the pond. I am your host, Jason Myles. I'm back from my 31-hour journey up north to the Bay Area. I hope you guys enjoyed Ryan Grimm, Deep State Cuba, Mean Jean Bajlan Thursday for our show, Do You Condemn Hamas? You guys enjoyed that show. From the viewing numbers, it looks like you guys had a lot to say about that show. As always, if you're new to the channel, please hit like, please hit subscribe. For you guys that watch all the time and don't hit subscribe, hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a very passive gesture that goes a long way in growing the channel. As you know, this is a Saturday free show. Hey, there is no bonus champagne room. So everyone gets access to the TIR VIP, where Toussaint will be joining us later, joining me. I don't know if the guys can stay. It is Saturday. Most people actually have lives. And in the case of the people on the screen, they'll be sharing the screen with me. They have wives. So it's the holiday season for these chaps. I'm sure they have things to do. For those of us that don't have anyone in their life or that hate their families and children. Just kidding. But seriously, we're going to have some fun. Toussaint and I have found some videos. We've curated a experience for you that I think you'll enjoy. We'd like to send a big thank you to all the subscribers on all the platforms. And of course, our patrons. Without you, we couldn't do this. So if you like what you see, if you have the means and feel so inclined and would like to support, be a part of the TIR family, become a patron for as little as $3 a month or $30 for the year. You can have access to all the champagne rooms, past and present. You can be in the live virtual audience for the Mau Mau Hour and join us for our movie nights. As simple as that. Let me bring, oh my goodness, I was going to bring in, oh, there he is. Let me bring in my guest co-host today. He is the sometimes why in the TIR family, and he's the sometimes why because he wants to keep his job. Please welcome Paul Prescott.
Hey.
What's going on, Paul? How are you?
I do like to keep my job.
I understand. And we can't get mad at you for that because sometimes we go a little off the rails here on this show. You experienced some champagne room shenanigans with us the other day.
I did.
And I'm sure I'm glad this is behind a paywall. I have a reputation to uphold. I thought of you the moment our guest today hit me up about this piece that he wrote. I said, you know who would be a great co-host with me on this? Robin T.G. Kelly.
Oh, shit.
I'm just kidding. I didn't think that at all.
Basically the same person. If you look real quick and you add 15 years.
50 years? Yeah.
15.
DG Kelly's way older than you.
I know, but.
Oh,
I was trying to be nice.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's an older man. It's okay. He's living just fine.
Yeah, he is.
He is not worried about anything we say.
This is true.
Look at those Negroes on that side of town.
That side of town being Philadelphia and Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. They'll never live in LA with me.
I'm safe from Umar Johnson.
Can you imagine Umar Johnson trying to get through DG Kelly's gated entrance?
And I kind of think he does have a British accent, in his house. I kind of think if I had to bet, I'd be willing to risk some money on that.
I believe in my soul that he has some amazing quote unquote African art in his house. Someone says meanie Jason. Hey, I'm not being mean. I believe that DG Kelly has really nice furniture. And when you walk in, you hear hella smooth jazz.
Yeah.
I can see that.
I mean, sometimes you just know, like, no one's surprised that behind me there's A. Philip Randolph and Paul Robeson. You know, you just know.
Right? You see Paul try to spice his room up because he was making fun of him the other day.
First of all, this was already here.
No, I didn't see. There's something behind you that I didn't see. It looks like a plant or something.
Oh, that was already there.
That was already there. Were you hiding it before?
You said I looked like I was in a hostage situation.
Okay, well, stop. Let's stop. Let's get
They're
serious.
treating me great. I have plenty of food and water.
The Jacobin hostage situation.
Umar Johnson is very kind to all.
Umar loves the kids. But when I thought of, seriously, like all jokes aside, when David, I didn't even get a chance to read the piece. I saw the title and read the little header, and I was like, oh man, I should get Paul on this. And then I totally forgot to email you for like a week, and I asked Toussaint to do it because I did forget. But many of us think of the Jim Crow South. We are reminded of images of lynching and second-class citizenship for its Black residents. In movies like Mississippi Burning, we understand that civil rights and justice is only achieved by the grace of white Northerners and the state in the form of the FBI. And even then, wins are titular and murderous law enforcement isn't really put in check. Our guest today has a bit of a counter narrative of the machinations of the Jim Crow South, one of cross-racial coalitions, poor sharecropping farmers united in fighting the intersection of racism and the oppressive landowning class. These capitalists cared less about the skin color of the people they oppressed with this system of labor. They diversified their exploitation. Statistically, about 2/3 of sharecroppers were white and 1/3 were Black, and they both found themselves economically at the bottom. From our guest article in Jacobin magazine, towards the end of 1934, the STFU, that's the Sharecropper Tenant Farmer Union, am I saying it right?
I think Southern Tenant Farmer Union.
That's Southern. Every time I see STFU, I think of the internet thing. So
Yeah.
had nearly 1,000 members, and it was not long before it too would face violence. When two organizers, Ward H. Rogers and Black minister C.H. Smith, went to hold a meeting in a church in Gilmore, Arkansas, a group of rioting bosses showed up and broke up the meeting. Rogers was able to escape with the help of a friend, but Smith was beaten and brought to jail. Despite the union's plea for assistance, the American Civil Liberties Union proved unwilling to provide legal assistance. So the union devised a plan. With the help of the lawyer C.T. Carpenter, about 20 of the white STFU members showed up to the Black preacher's hearing armed with canes in case of attack. Their show of solidarity worked, and Smith was released into the care of the union. The union's commitment to interracial organizing went from theory to practice that day, and holdouts in the Black community, who dubbed the commitment of the STFU, joined in mass. As Mitchell wrote, Black and white unity had carried the day. There was never any question that the union members would come to the aid of their brothers, Black or white, in their time of need. Please welcome the co-host of Left Reckoning and Jacobin columnist and my co-host for live shows and my friend in real life, David Griscom.
How's it going, friends? Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I'm pretty stoked to have you on and talk about this. I think this is one of those things that when we think of the Jim Crow South, we never talk about sharecropping, and we never talk about this cross-racial alliance. A term we say a lot on this show that we should define a bit more is sharecropping. You know, Pascal talks about it all the time. David, can you explain how the sharecropping system works and why did many see it akin to slavery?
Yeah, I mean, so the tenant and sharecropping system in the South was at this time, was very much a vestige of slavery. It was something where people were very much economically disenfranchised, and they were working the land that was owned by a plantation boss. And it was tough, difficult work, mainly growing cotton and things like that. And I mean, I can give you like a little bit of a rundown of like what the year would look like for people. So at the beginning of the year, the tenant farmers would come forward to the company store and they would buy the materials that they needed to produce cotton, along with the food and all of those other things that they needed to maintain their lives. Oftentimes, these are very poor people. I mean, yes, they almost, across the board, they're poor. That's why they're in this situation. And these company stores would charge just outrageous rates to people. So you would start the year massively in debt. That debt would accrue over the year. And then the hard work of planning and clearing the land would get started. You would do that for the majority of the spring going to the summer. And once the cotton was sort of laid, things would sort of slow down a bit and people would sort of be left to fend for themselves. That was a time of hunting and fishing. And I think really interestingly, the time of the big revivals, which is where the plantation bosses would get kind of fire and brimstone preachers to come and speak to the farmers there. And oftentimes, as H.L. Mitchell, the person whose autobiography I was reviewing for Jacobin, notes that the plantation boss would oftentimes slip the preachers a little something extra to make sure that you really drove home the fact that everyone's pitiful condition was driven by their sinful ways, which is an interesting kind of connection there between some of that old-time Southern religion and capitalism. Then you would go through the hard work of actually picking the cotton, and everything that in the town was shut down. Kids would be pulled out of school. Wives, fathers, children would all be out there picking. And then it would come time for settlement. And settlement time was just like a clear example of how abused these people were, because when it would come down to it, you'd say, okay, well, how much cotton did you produce this year? Okay, I'm going to look at my ledger and see how much you used to feed yourself and your family. Oh, it looks like you're still in debt. And there are plenty of stories. Most of these people were either, were illiterate and did not keep records and things like that. So literally there'd be stories about, it just turns out that you're just, $3 in debt this year. You did good. You're not too far in debt. And then someone would note that like, oh, actually, I have another ton or two of cotton that you didn't account for. And the person looking at the ledgers, oftentimes either the plantation owner or one of his riding bosses would look at the ledger and be like, oh, yeah, it's still $3, right? They'd find something else. So these people were basically stuck in a system of debt slavery. When people did get paid, they were oftentimes paid in company plantation money. People know the term scrip from West Virginia, but they had a similar kind of system there. So people didn't get paid oftentimes in the US dollar. And they were buying products and things, again, at these company stores that were charging way above market rate. The system was sort of maintained by what was called the riding bosses. Again, very similar to what you would imagine on a plantation under slavery. And it also so happened that most of these riding bosses were oftentimes the local sheriff. So a direct connection between your boss and the law. And, the reason, you always have to be careful when you make these kind of analogies. The reason that the slavery aspect is very apt is that if you were somebody who decided, I'm going to leave this situation, it's not working for me, it's not working for my family, I don't have a future here. Those same riding bosses would come and gather you and pull you right back to the plantation. And again, this is, almost 70 years after the end of slavery, and people are still basically tied to the land. So that's the vestige of the slave system in the South. It was a system that was incredibly brutal. Oftentimes, one of the only real jobs in town in the Western South, where a lot of the STFU activities were. So it was a very brutal and difficult period that then gets worse as the Great Depression starts. But that's basically what that system and the conditions were at the beginning of the STFU.
Paul, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a comment. I mean, I think it's worth remembering about this period when we talk about voter disenfranchisement. Clearly, there was voter suppression among Black people in the South. But also, I mean, the planter class was perfectly happy to suppress the vote of so many white working people, because clearly if they did have the chance to vote, they would vote to try to overturn this system, even regardless of their views on race. So that, I mean, that's kind of why you see this, voter suppression was kind of across the board for working people, black and white, during this period.
100%. And, just noting too, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but, it's probably not surprising to people, but, the planning class very much tried to pit whites and blacks against each other. And what ends up happening with the STFU is so, radical and revolutionary because they were able to break through that thing that the planning class was so desperately afraid of, which was actually just getting working people to be united.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the Agricultural Adjustment Act and how that actually helped to form the STFU?
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, as people, can imagine, very difficult time, Great Depression for everybody. Certainly also in Southern agriculture. And the folks in DC came up with the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which effectively was calling for people for planters to leave a significant portion of their lands unharvested, about a third. And the way that system was set up was that the government would sort of pay you to sort of leave some of your fields unused. HL and you had bizarre things, and one of the great American socialist leaders, Norman Thomas, made a big deal about this, about how disgusting it is to see all this cotton being ripped up when there was a bunch of children in the United States of America who didn't have clothes. H.L. Mitchell notes in this book, very kind of Southern term here, but he goes, mules have more sense than men. And what he meant by that is that, all the mules were sort of trained never step on, the cotton. And when they were ripping up all of this cotton, the mules were not, participating because they had been trained their entire life to sort of keep this thing safe, available to be cultivated. So the Agricultural Adjustment Act sends money to, and this was nationwide, by the way, and this is one of the reasons that the STFU is formed and all this kind of stuff, is that, that system didn't really work too bad if you were a small landholder, particularly in the Midwest. You're just getting money from the government, fine, right? But the problem in the South, where you had this kind of industrialized, agrarian system, well, the money went to the planters, and the planters were just evicting workers, and you had these mass epidemics of homelessness, of people literally living on the side of the road because they couldn't work anymore. The planters were kicking them off of their land. And while the Agricultural Adjustment Act did sort of have provisions saying, hey, you have to distribute this money to your workers, well, the enforcement mechanism was the planters. And like Arkansas feels very far away from DC,
Does it feel a little bit like COVID money to you when businesses got COVID money and sorry, Henson, we're gonna have to lay off the whole tribe of you.
Certainly. I mean, there is all of that aspect, going on. The money flows one way, basically. So before even the STFU kicks off, some of the early work was trying to take advantage of government programs, to hire unemployed people. And a lot of these tenant farmers were struggling to get those jobs. So the early period of the STFU and even the pre-STFU moment is, just trying to get people access to these federal programs that were going on. And I just should note really fast to maybe introduce, one of the main characters here, one of the founders of the Southern Tenant Farmers Union, H.L. Mitchell, who I can get a little bit more to his kind of biography and stuff in a little bit. He was a radical. He was a socialist. He was the secretary of the Arkansas Socialist Party. And when he was meeting with Norman Thomas, who was one of the leaders of the Socialist Party at that time, Norman Thomas basically said something along the lines of, it's really great, all the work that you've been doing, expanding membership in the Socialist Party in Arkansas, but what's really needed is an organization for the workers themselves. And it's probably a good idea to start organizing people in the main industry in your area, which are tenant farmers. So one thing that I think is just important to note is that the STFU actually, it's organic in the sense of it being grassroots and growing in the way that it did. But it was socialists who sort of said, okay, there's a need here for an organization for working people. And it was that kind of reorientation to like the actual, being class rooted, being rooted in like the needs of folks, that led to the STFU coming out of, some leaders in the Socialist Party.
Paul, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, kind of a follow-up question about H.L. Mitchell. When I think about working class leaders like him, and there's so many examples from this era broadly. I mean, whether it's, union people, rural people, whatever it is, but it kind of strikes me that at this time, institutions of the left were a place where regular people like Mitchell could find a home, and they could really kind of develop and display their leadership skills, their organizing skills. It could all blossom. And I feel like today that's kind of less likely, like where a regular ass person, a regular UPS driver, a regular whatever, someone who doesn't already know the like language and symbols of the left and the culture can be welcomed. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, are we at a time now where it's kind of less likely you get these regular working class people being welcomed on the left and being able to develop?
Well, do you feel, can I add this to your question, Paul, before you answer, David? Do you feel that this is also a time, and Pascal also used to love to talk about this moment, because this is a moment that we don't really talk about, because when we think about leftism, we always stop at the 60s. Marx and then the 60s. And there's a reason why, right? Because it really gets taken over by the academy. And this is a moment where the left really is truly the working class. Like, this is a group of socialists and communists, kind of even amongst these regular people, bickering about the Communist Party as well. What's your opinion on this era, David? I know you like to talk about this era as well, being from the South yourself.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think, just specifically on Paul's question, I think that, one thing that the STFU did so well, and even the Socialist Party did so well, was actually one, recruiting and developing talent within the working class. And they did that through providing, like, one thing that the STFU did in addition to its political and economic work is they just did education, right? They just did night school for people. And later Commonwealth College, which Megan Day at Jacobin has written some really great pieces about, which was a socialist college in Western Arkansas. They were sending people out there, right? And that's a really, really radical and fascinating tradition. And it's wild to sort of see that kind of thing happening in the 30s. That sort of seems impossible to happen today. Another thing before I get to like the meat of the question too, that's really notable that I wasn't able to put as much in the piece that really struck me, was the internationalism of this union, and not just in the sense of like, oh, we're paying attention to things going on across the world. You had members of like the trade union movement in the United Kingdom going out to rural Arkansas to learn from each other, to help each other, to instruct each other. And that's just such a wild thing to think about, rural Arkansas in the 1930s, having socialists from England coming over. Just seems so far off from what we're able to do today, even at a moment when we're so much more connected and traveling so much easier. But no, 100%. One of the things that I think is really notable about this time was that the left and socialist movements in the country were very much focused on cultivating and recruiting talent from within the class. There's certainly characters, a lot of there were people in the STFU who were, college educated folks, predominantly preachers, by the way, which had, especially back then, like a very real connection to the people, right? You might have went and got a fancy degree, but then you end up in, the South in a rural place. So you have that education, but you're also like connected to people in their daily life. And a lot of those people were, radicals and socialists, right? Which is an interesting kind of split, as I was noting earlier about how some of that fire and brimstone religion was used to maintain capital domination of people. There was also a kind of radical socialist tradition within some of the American Christian movement at that time. But no, 100%. I mean, I think one thing that's really notable about this moment is that these were just normal people, and that's one thing I really tried to drive home in this piece. Is like, we haven't even gone to the gallantry or the kind of amazing stories. I mean, there's parts of this book that feel very cinematic, right? Because not only were they taking on the bosses and the federal government, but they were literally taking up fighting against the KKK, and not just in the sense of political struggle, but literally like KKK guys would come and shoot up your house, and people would shoot back, right? It was a real shooting war. And that only comes when you actually have people who are very rooted in the class. And like a couple things, just like the STFU ends up like feuding with some of the Socialist Party later, because H.L. Mitchell and members of the STFU sort of recognized that agricultural production in the South had been socialized, right? The profits were privatized, but the production was socialized. And we're sort of calling for common ownership of the agricultural system, which was the complete opposite of what a lot of the Midwestern and Yankee socialists wanted, because they dreamed of agriculture sort of being solo, small family, small landholding farms. A lot of them were small landholders. So it was an interesting kind of clash between some of the more educated and well-meaning socialists. Let's not attack them too hard, but a lot of the members in the Socialist Party outside the South very much were against this idea of collectivization of agriculture, while these tenant farmers saw that as the way to sort of build out a future system.
Paul?
Yeah, and I think that's important context too with the Klan and their role in this, or Klan-like formations. It's like it's not just a group of people, who are really prejudiced and have really bad personal views. I mean, sure, that's part of it, but like it's kind of like they were the shock troops of trying to enforce and maintain a certain social and economic system. So I think, again, this broader economic context of the Klan is useful, instead of just thinking about it as like a bunch of people who like to be racist together. And you also talked about Mitchell's ability to kind of win sympathy and support from Northerners to the cause. And I kind of had never really thought about that, of like why they might have felt it would be necessary to like win over people in the North. Could you kind of talk a little bit about why they saw that as important and how they did that?
100%. I mean, I'm forgetting the direct quote, but somebody in speaking highly of H.L. Mitchell, has this great line about him that said his drawl was authentic, his simplicity was not. Right. This was a guy who very much could go up to New York and sort of play the role that some people might have wanted to see. But he was somebody who was incredibly well read and had a deep understanding of history, of literature, of politics. But in New York for years, they had these kind of large gatherings of just supporters of the tenant farmers within the working class movement in New York. Showings of solidarity, which is, again, like a truly amazing thing. I mean, could you imagine something like that happening with, American leftists in New York today when the coal miners were on strike in Alabama? It was a very unique thing. And one of the things that the STFU knew how to do really well was garner public sympathy and support for their movement. And they used the media and reports on the plight of tenant farmers very, very well, to sort of make this into a national issue. And they use that very well, for example, when they were sort of clashing with the FDR administration. But yeah, no, I mean, particularly just getting, wealthier folks, or just folks who are more well off than poor, Southern farmers, to donate money to the STFU was critical, actually, in their ability to grow and support, this education campaign that they were engaged in, the political and the economic campaign that they were engaged in. It's a Southern movement in the sense of, this is where they were operating, was in the South. But this became a kind of rallying cry for socialists and leftists all across the country to find ways to support, which is, again, a very interesting thing to see how deep the connections of the STFU are even outside of the South.
You mentioned something in your piece. I think we should probably touch on this, the Elaine massacre. Can you tell us what this was and why it happened?
Yeah, the Elaine massacre was a brutal massacre of tenant farmers, black tenant farmers, who were trying to organize and build movements for power, and they were, a significant amount of people were shot down and killed for this economic organizing that they were engaged in, and it was something that sort of cast a big shadow over the early days of the STFU because people had this living memory of um, just brutal racial terror. And, one of the things that the STFU sort of had to overcome in its early days was moving the commitments to interracial organizing, interracial solidarity from a principle and a slogan and all of that into like an actual practice. And that's why I note in the piece that, the early days of the STFU, they were getting people to sign up. But again, the KKK and their offshoot, the Night Riders, who is effectively just an offshoot of the KKK, were breaking up meetings from the get go. They knew the second that this started to happen that it was extremely dangerous, and so they needed to crush it. And they try to crush it, with this kind of brutality, using the kind of living memory of brutal slaughter in the region. And it was because of the tenacity of these organizers and members of the STFU. To not back down. And there were a lot of folks in the early days of the STFU who were, trying to push for it to become a whites only organization or to have separate chapters for whites and blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And H.L. Mitchell just refused that from the get-go, which I think, that's probably the critical moment about whether or not, not only if we would say like the STFU is like a good organization, but also their success. Because, if you organize in a bifurcated way, workers, then it's very easy to sort of pit those forces against each other. And the STFU was able to sort of break through that by having white members, show up and support black members, and to not just sort of say, oh, well, this is just the conditions of the time. Some of these folks are going to have to take on more risks than others. Very much like living the union slogan of like an injury to one is an injury to all. And you had obviously that story that I note in my piece about all these folks getting together and surrounding the courthouse when one of the early black organizers in the union was arrested. But throughout this story, you would have just white members showing up armed to guard and protect some of the larger black population centers in the STFU. And it was that kind of everyday practical organizing that really shot up the membership. I mean, after they rescued the black minister C.H. Smith, the membership in the STFU just exploded. It exploded almost overnight because there was understandably like a little bit of reluctance from particularly some black folks in the area to join the STFU, because it meant, one, you could be targeted. Two, people were seeing folks being sort of kicked off of their land. And then obviously also the racial terror. And when it became clear that the STFU was something that wasn't just going to talk the talk, but actually walk the walk, membership, grew immensely. And I think that that's one of the really interesting and critical lessons that we can sort of take from this, is that like a lot of left organizations like to talk about a lot of things that we believe. And I think that's all well and good. But one of the challenges for socialist politics is always trying to convince working people that being in an organization, that being engaged in politics, that being engaged in union activities, like, can actually improve your life. And the STFU, under tremendous difficulty, was able to start winning things for everyday folks, and that was critical for them.
Do you think this is harder to do in the current time that we're in right now, because the conditions back then are very different when you're trying to build solidarity, right? In that situation, let's take, for example, the actors' strike that just went on. Terrence Howard, I'm sure you've seen this, Paul. You've seen, you know who Terrence Howard is.
Yeah.
It's hard out here for a pimp. Maybe the worst pimp ever, man. He was telling his story about how in playing a pimp, you're pretending, right? You're not really a pimp. That he would not slap a woman because he said it was going to be career suicide. And I was like, but you're playing a pimp. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. You get it. You've seen Superfly. And then he went on to talk about how the union was not helping him with wages. And he's been very loud about how unions don't help. And there's a lot of working people, especially people in the trades, that feel like unions are just corrupt institutions that take money out of your check. Paul, as someone that actually does organizing, and I'm sure you hear this rhetoric more often than not, what do you say to that?
Are you asking what I would say to a worker who is saying that, or?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, well, I mean, there's a few ways you could approach it. I mean, depending the context on who you're talking to, but, I mean, part of it is very clearly propaganda. I mean, there are some unions that have and do act in a not great way or a corrupt way, just like there's that example in every institution.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the thing is now, I mean, union density is so low, so few people actually have the experience of being in a union, and it's like, so whatever they're basing their thoughts are something received from the outside usually. But often, I mean, a really good way to combat that is not necessarily through like a rhetorical argument, but through, they often say like a union really, before you organize the workers to join, like you should really just start acting like a union beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like a collective action that wins something, even if it's something very small, just recently in some Amazon plants on the East Coast, like in, New York, New Jersey, workers were fighting for the right to have an earbud in while they're working because Amazon was claiming it's a safety hazard. And they pushed back saying, like, at UPS, drivers are always on the earbuds. And they won it. And it sounds like it's a very small thing. But as an example of, like, when we band together, we can actually win something. So, I mean, the most kind of back to David's point, I mean, the most powerful example is in practice. And I do think, I mean, the positive is right now we're in a moment where actually the esteem of unions is actually pretty high among the population. And it has, in a way it hasn't been in a long time. And we'll see where this all goes. I don't want to get too excited too soon, but the auto workers, their theory has been, we need to use the momentum from their strike and from all the struggle that's been happening to organize a lot of new workers now and do it on a momentum basis, which is kind of how it usually has happened historically. Is not like this methodical progression, but you seize a moment of momentum. And there's stories coming out, thousands of workers are reaching out to the UAW. It's not even them reaching out to the workers, but they're crying out for a union. They're getting cards signed. So I think we're in a moment, thankfully, where I think a lot of that anti-union propaganda is starting to wear off. I mean, partly because it's like it's hard to blame unions when they're so weak right now, sadly. And not many people have experience with them. It's hard to make the claim that they're really powerful and they're really influencing everything right now. So I think it kind of is a different moment. And I actually just wanted to say to what David's last point, to the last question, it kind of reminds me there's a lot of parallels between the development of industrial unions in the North in the 30s and 40s and the growth of the CIO. Whereas, you had in 1919, famous year for all these race riots across the country. The 1920s, also bad race riots, bad experiences of unions not letting in black workers and conflict, black workers being used as strike breakers. So like the organizers of the 30s had to overcome the very understandable skepticism of black workers that this time it would be different. And people had living memory of these incidents, and they had to really show through action. And again, a lot of it was done on the shop floor, kind of showing in practice, like we're actually going to stand with each other this time. And it was a lot of socialists and communists who were in these unions who were often at the forefront of racial justice and making sure they were doing interracial organizing. So I kind of see a parallel path there with the Southern Tenants, Farmers Union, and industrial unions in the North.
And maybe just to add to that, like I think one thing that also, like in addition to the stuff that we're getting at, with like them getting wins, right? They went on strike to get higher pay for cotton, and things like that were pretty exceptional. The strategies that they used there, but I think one thing that also gave the STFU a lot of trust from everyday folks was like one of the things that's unique about the STFU versus almost any other union, is that it's probably the only union out there that encouraged people to leave. And like one of the things that the STFU did was help Southern Tenant Farmers Union members get jobs in New Jersey, get jobs in California, get jobs in Arizona, get jobs in Texas outside of the tenant farming system. And that's the kind of thing that sort of goes against a lot of kind of union strategy, which is like I have to protect my industry, I have to make sure that this thing maintains itself. And the STFU very much, I think, oriented itself as like a class organization, that like our number one goal is not necessarily the preservation of the tenant farming system. They want to actually eradicate that. And I think that gave people a lot of trust. And also talking about what you were just saying, Paul, about being creative. I mean, the STFU was never really well funded, but they would do stuff all the time with very little resources, and it might be as small as like, paying for a doctor's visit or something like that for people. That kind of activity really helped garner a lot of trust. They also helped, they at a certain point got some money together to build collective farming operations in Alabama and Mississippi. Pretty small scale, but you had people living on collective farms, black and white families living right next to each other in Alabama and Mississippi in the 30s and 40s, which is pretty exceptional, for many reasons. And it's just, I think it's like that kind of everyday commitment to people, both in like the direct political struggle, but also, the education work and all these other things, that this was a place, this was something that you want to be a part of, because you could tell that this was an organization that was really looking out for you. I think that that's a really important aspect.
Another important aspect, and someone mentioned it in the chat comments, and I want to say thank you to, I think it was Left Flank Vets that rated the show. So thank you very much, Marcus and the Left Flank Vets. Solidarity. Why was the Communist Party antagonistic to Mitchell, and how did their vision for the STFU differ from that of the original socialist one?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting story, and there's some background here that might not be able to get fully into, but
you can name names. It's been 100
well,
years.
I mean, these people are all dead, so I can certainly name names, but
totally name names, you're fine.
No, I mean, like, I think one of the things, because the American Communist Party has like a very interesting history in this country, in the labor movement and in the South. And one of the things that the Communist Party was trying to do early on was they wanted H.L. Mitchell to become a member of the Communist Party from the get-go. And again, Mitchell was a dyed-in-the-wool socialist. He was a big fan of Lenin, had read Marx. This is not some kind of soft reformer. This was a radical. But the Communist Party basically wanted to have influence over one of the largest organizations of poor black and white workers in the South. So they tried really hard to take over the organization. So at first they were, coming up to Mitchell. And I think Mitchell made a kind of tactical decision, which I think makes a lot of sense, is that, if we have to come up against the planners, the FDR administration, all these people, I don't think that we need to be encouraging people to become members of the Communist Party of the United States of America. It's just too much to put on our backs. The Socialist Party, begins to start to implode at this period of time too. So there was, a kind of lack of a party structure, particularly later in the struggle. But yeah, so the Communist Party starts making overtures to members and to Mitchell, and they're sort of rebuked at first. And then the Communist Party tries to take over the organization in a way that, sounds so comical today, because it's just the kind of shit that you could do back then. H.L. Mitchell just wasn't around for a little while, and they just went into the STFU office and took letterhead and shit from them and started sending out letters. And the idea was basically they were going to send out letters to sort of expose Mitchell as a member of the Communist Party, even though he wasn't. so that he would get the fire and the flack already, and then sort of, okay, well, that will sort of alleviate the tension that he said is, oh, I don't want to deal with this, sort of throw him in the fire. They end up, Mitchell and all the guys find out that they've taken over the office, and they sort of deal with that there. Then some of the members, Don Henderson, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Paul. He was a CIO guy, Communist Party member, starts trying to create tension between black and white workers within the organization. The STFU always had a pretty representative organizing committee and higher up officials of blacks and whites. But Don Henderson basically starts, trying to play into this idea. It's like, oh, the STFU is just run by white people, and they're just trying to take advantage of black folks. And they got a guy, E.B. McKinney, who was a black organizer, one of the actual founders of the STFU, who got really into Marcus Garvey, and they got him. To start to try to lead a split in the organization. It becomes really dangerous. I mean, H.L. Mitchell at one point gets kicked out of the STFU because the Communist Party started circulating. Because you could, the thing is, like, you talk about fake news and things like that. Like at that time, you just put something on paper and you start distributing it to people. It could feel very real.
A telephone at church.
Yeah, 100%. So they started saying, "Oh, H.L. Mitchell is, driving a fancy car. He's been eating through the STFU funds." Just things that were demonstrably false, but tried to do that, and it ended up pushing H.L. Mitchell and some of the early leaders of the STFU out of the organization. But the STFU became really dysfunctional when those guys were kicked out. It was a short period of time they were kicked out. And people sort of realized that, oh man, all these folks at the Communist Party are sort of trying to push into this union, seem to be very interested in doing things for the Communist Party and for sort of having us talk a lot about Russia, and not really for taking on, our enemies. And they're able to regain that. And it's a sad story, though, I have to say, as somebody who, spent a lot of time with this book and reading this story, because it's sad to see a lot of the early members who ended up sort of being swayed by the Communist Party folks sort of throw their lot in with them. Some of them basically like reformed or recognized what was going on later once they started to see what the kind of new communist influence was doing within the STFU. A lot of this is also Commonwealth College. Again, which is the Socialist College out in Arkansas, which also had a kind of shift in its membership from that early socialist tradition to that more radical socialist tradition, to basically being taken over by a lot of people from New York City and the North, who were just very much focused on building the Communist Party. So that creates a lot of tension. I mean, it's yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, not to get too sidetracked on the Communist Party, but I think this kind of is worth, highlighting to kind of explain why actually some like very radical people in the U.S. left historically were anti-communist. And some of them, I mean, people like A. Philip Randolph, just name one example, Bayard Rustin eventually. I wrote a piece that came out yesterday about Harry Van Arsdale, who was the leader of the Electrical Workers Union in New York, who went on strike and won a 25-hour work week, built cooperative housing for workers, things like that. He was anti-communist, and you would ask yourself, like, why? How could these people get caught up in that? But I mean, think about what David just described about, in some instances, the way they would try to take over organizations. I mean, if you experience that and you're someone serious about building the movement, I mean, that's going to piss you off, And the classic talking point against the Communist Party was they really take their orders from Moscow. That's really who's running the show. And part of that was an exaggeration, but part of that was kind of real. And think about, if you were a union worker and your coworker who was a Communist Party person, in the lead up to World War II is saying, one day is saying, Hitler's bad. And then the Hitler-Stalin pact happens, and then all of a sudden they're saying that's Hitler's fine, which they were doing, and then once that treaty was broken, oh no, Hitler's bad again. You lose credibility, and I think that's what happened And, people like A. Philip Randolph had experiences multiple times where at a certain point it became clear they're just trying to take over this group, or they're not really in it for the movement. And I think, now, does that excuse McCarthyism? Absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
And is that to say, tons and tons of extremely dedicated, talented people in the Communist Party who did a lot, for labor movement and everything. But I think it does help to explain why people who were actually quite radical became anti-communist when it came specifically to the Communist Party of the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think,
but not the objectives of communism.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is, and I think because people sometimes, I think, get the wrong impression here is that like all these people sort of, stop being radicals or stop being socials or things like that. It was the institution and the organization of the Communist Party, particularly in the South, was just trying to say, okay, well, how can we sort of expand our membership almost artificially? And the way to do that was to sort of take over other kinds of organizations. And as I was sort of noting, it became very clear that the intention was not to do it. As I said earlier, like the STFU was like the only organization to encourage union members to leave, and to move somewhere else and to find new jobs and things like that. Is that kind of practical, care for working class folks that just wasn't very present when the communists started getting more influence within the STFU. And I think that certainly hurt them a lot.
Paul, you have a question I know you want to ask. Can you see your list, or you want me to read it?
I do. I think you might be talking about, I don't know which question you're talking about, but I did want to ask. It's a little bit of a two-parter.
Go for it. If you know it, go for it.
And David, I don't expect you to be like the whisperer of rural America, but a lot of the country is still rural. It's a big.
Those hats behind him. If he's not, then he's.
I know. You're kind of. Well, what would you say? Obviously things are very different now than the 1930s, but like in 2023, what are the key issues, in terms of some parts of rural America that, the left should be focusing on in those areas? And kind of related to that, what is a socialist vision for agriculture in the 21st century?
I think, there's the kind of basic like everyone knows, if you've done any door knocking, one thing that gets people very rightfully worked up is right to repair. And that's like the more like basic kind of political organizing thing. But when it comes to, rural politics in this country and trying to shift it, a lot of the demands that people have are similar, right? People want to, have higher wages. And I think more than anything is what you're seeing in rural America is people wanting to be able to continue to live in their community. More and more, rural America is sort of being, in the same way that's what's happening in cities, is being bought up and taken over by very, very wealthy landowners. The expense and the difficulty of surviving, getting by in rural America, people are seeing, families that have been places for generations, slowly having to sort of trickle out because they either can't afford to live in their communities, or because of lack of services, lack of access to food, lack of access to healthcare, and most importantly, lack of access to high-paying work. There's a lot of demands for people to be able to maintain and live in their communities. And I think that recognizing that we're all under this kind of umbrella system of capitalism and trying to take on the folks that are meaning that you can't, are the folks who are preventing us from being able to live in our communities, I think is something that's very, very viable. The second question on agriculture, it's interesting to read Mitchell's accounts. I'll just read this from the piece here. Towards the end of his book, he starts talking about, the future of agriculture. And one thing that's interesting about Mitchell in this period of time is that, they really had 2 feet in between 2 different worlds, right? One, the old agrarian plantation South, and what we would now call the New South. And they sort of saw that transition happening around them. The tenant farming system broke, one, because of the power of the STFU to organize, but 2, because agriculture changed. Agriculture became more mechanized. The amount of labor needed to maintain and to grow crops declined. And I think Mitchell was very forward looking Instead of being, because, you know, I mean, what's the Marxist take on, you know, agrarian or rural folks is, you know, always that they're reactionary, right? That they're sort of against the forward moving of society and progress and technology and things like that. That is not an accurate way to describe somebody like H.L. Mitchell. This is somebody who had tremendous love for the people, who had tremendous love for where he came from. But because of that love, he didn't become sentimental about the tenant farming system. And he said at the end of his book, he said, eventually agriculture, America's largest industry, must be socialized and operated for the benefit of those who work on the land and those who consume its products. This, I believe, is the real wave of the future. And I think that, you know, as we are sort of seeing all these conversations in this country about food insecurity, people's anxiety about the consolidation of agriculture under the hands of a few large corporations, you know, I actually think that claim and that desire and that dream of actually having socially controlled food, something that's democratically controlled by the workers and by society at large, I think it actually has a lot of, you know, potential to sort of being a calling card of the American socialist movement, because everybody from like sometimes like very well founded to sometimes a little bit conspiratorial level stuff when it comes to the food system in America, most people are very anxious about the way that we produce food, and food security and things like that. And I think that that's something that you can bring up in rural America or in urban America right now. And the vision that H.L. Mitchell sort of laid out to call for collectivization of agriculture, you know, and as I said earlier, was something that got him in a lot of hot water, both with the socialists and also with the federal government and the planning class. I think it's something that we should definitely pick up again today.
Paul?
I agree.
You know, there's one thing I wanted to note, and I can't remember if I was able to put in the piece. That's just like an interesting note here. You know, we're talking about you know, the KKK and how, you know, racial terror was a tactic of the ruling class, right? It was, you know, racial terror for the purpose of you know, breaking up labor and solidarity movements. Another thing that's really interesting in this story is the role of finance capital. So when people were sort of being kicked off of their land, and people were organizing and the STFU was growing in power, the STFU was trying to negotiate a kind of floor for how much you have to pay for cotton, right? Say, we won't pick cotton for less than the, you know, very classic kind of union things. Like, this is what it costs to get this labor done. And obviously, you know, the night riders and all these people try to break it. But even with some of these plantation bosses and plantation owners who might have been a little bit sympathetic, and I'm not going to shed too many tears for these folks, but there were multiple stories in this book about plantation owners saying, you know what, I do want to recognize the STFU. I do want to start negotiating with these folks. You know, I live on the same land. These are my neighbors, whatever. You know, we'll accept their demands. They got threatened, one, by the night riders, but I think most effectively by finance capital, by the banks. And the banks threatened to sort of collect loans, to potentially foreclose land, to put economic pressure on the plantation bosses, because they recognize finance capital in the South. Well, you know, what is that around? It's around cotton. They recognized that if the cost to produce cotton went up in the South, that was going to hurt their bottom line. You know, so it's an interesting aspect to see about the way that, you know, finance capital and capitalism sort of influences and directly pressures people who might have been like convinced by the moral arguments or the social arguments of people, that was actually like the final strong arm against folks. There's a really moving story where you know, a bunch of these tenant farmers had been kicked off of their land, and they were living in these kind of shanty towns on the side of the road. And one of the plantation owners was out there like distributing food and crying and like devastated because he had been told that if he recognized the STFU, if he recognized their demands, that the banks would come and foreclose on his property. And I think he was a smaller landholder, if I'm recalling the story correctly. But, you know, it's an interesting little wrinkle in the way that we think about this too, is that there are very powerful forces that you know, played a direct role. You know, because sometimes the left, you know, talks about the power of capital, but sometimes you don't see the way that it actually operates. And in that case, they were actually pressuring the boss to maintain, brutal exploitation of people, and making a direct threat against that person's life, and property.
And a lot of this violence that we see has a lot more to do with labor struggles and union organization than simply just masochistic people in bed sheets.
Yeah, and I'll tell you though, the STFU guys were tough as hell. They would oftentimes, they would shoot back and they would fight back. I mean, I open up the story in Jacobin with Ward Rogers, a radical Methodist preacher, who says, "I can lead a lynch mob. I can lead a lynch mob against any planter in Poinsett County," which is a pretty incredible image to think about, especially what you sort of associate with the lynch mob is not going after the bosses and the planners. H.L. Mitchell, there's a story that I really love. People were always trying to break up their meetings, and H.L. Mitchell had multiple assassination attempts against him, obviously. One of my favorites, though, was he was giving a speech in eastern Arkansas, in a town square. And from his telling, he's like, somebody threw a firecracker up on the stage. And he said, "Oh, I'm not going to get scared by some hooligan." Well, actually, some guy was just like luckily it was a bad shot, but was just actually like unloading their revolver at him, and luckily missed every time. And H.L. Mitchell just kept on talking, which is a pretty badass image. There's maybe on like a kind of fun note, if y'all don't mind. I know, like, Paul, your piece on Tony Mazzocchi, I really love. For many reasons, but one of the points that you made in it was how much fun being in the union was, and that's very much the case in the STFU. One thing that's really fun about this book, and I'll just put it up for people, I don't get anything for it, it's an older book, but Mean Things Happening in This Land, I do highly suggest people read it, is that, like, in addition to like all this really cool labor history, Southern history, and things like that, it's just like these guys, like, getting fucked up, sleeping around, getting in trouble. H.L. Mitchell was a young, good-looking guy, so there's a lot in this book actually about women he was interested in, which is a very fun thing to get in a history book. Another thing about like a bad shot, there was a guy who was an early member of the STFU who thought that H.L. Mitchell had slept with his wife, and maybe he did, maybe he didn't. H.L. Mitchell denies in the book. But this guy kept on trying to shoot H.L. Mitchell. And it's a funny thing, like every 10 years or so in this story, it'll be like, "Oh, and this guy showed up again at a union meeting I was at and tried to kill me." There's just one thing that I really love about this book is it's, in addition to like the history and the practical lessons that we get, is there's a really human look at people. And Michael Harrington wrote the preface to this book, which is a little funny because, and it's a great preface. I'll give him a lot of credit there, talking about the South and the radical and revolutionary potential in there. H.L. Mitchell had a little bit of a up and down relationship with Harrington later in life. But Harrington has a great line. It's like, "This is a testament to the grandeur of everyday people. Reading this book is like having a conversation with history, not the history of presidents and princes, but the history of those who do the dying and the living. We are enormously in H.L. Mitchell's debt." And I think that that's a really important thing to actually take away from this book that I haven't been able to talk about as much, because obviously you want to get into the history and the kind of practical organizing lessons that you can get from it. Is that, this is a book is like a real testament to like a love of everyday and common folks. And throughout the book, there's, just all these great stories that I was noting before, but also a lot of poetry. John Hancock, who is was STFU member, a poet and a singer. He wrote the song "Roll the Union On." People might know it. He also wrote a great song called "Mean Things Happening in This Land." And there's just a lot of space in there too, in addition to the political and the economic struggles, of just sort of like a really beautiful window into everyday folks' life. And one of the things that's really wonderful about Mitchell in this period is that Mitchell, towards the end of his life, very much became a historian of the South. And you know, did a lot of work sort of making sure that the STFU's history was preserved, that the stories of these people were preserved. There's a lot of really great interviews with members of the STFU out there from UNC and I think another Arkansas university that I'm forgetting right now. You know, because of that testament. And I think that that's like another aspect too, you know, talking about some of the lessons and some of the things that are missing is that, man, these guys didn't, leftists in this country do have like two ways of talking about working people that I think aren't particularly helpful. One is the, you know, the kind of snide disdain of the mob and the crowd that comes from some leftists who aren't really politically or socially active, but you know, oh, Americans, they just love cheeseburgers and whatever the fuck, right? That's nasty, anti-human stuff. But also this almost kind of myth making that sort of takes people from what they actually are, people who are just like us, you know, rooted folks trying to get a better life for their family, for themselves, for their children, who had tremendous courage and tenacity and heroism because of the conditions that they were under. But they were just normal rural people from Arkansas and Tennessee and, you know, across the South. And I think H.L. Mitchell does a really great job at sort of, you know, to borrow again that phrase from Michael Harrington, you know, telling about the grandeur of ordinary people without turning anyone into like a storybook, right? Because in addition to the good things that people did, there's, you know, oh man, this guy's a little bit of a creep or, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? It's just a very clear and I think, and that makes it more beautiful to me, retelling and visiting of folks in a particular historical moment.
Imperfect people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's for some reason, people are still trying to make heroes. And I'm not a big fan of heroes. I'm a huge fan of regular people because we are extremely flawed and imperfect. But that doesn't mean we can't do extraordinary things together.
Yeah. And that's like the heroism. I mean, I don't mind having heroes personally, but I think that like the problem is when you make people mythical, right? Because the point is that like there's just this latent capacity in all of us, and that's the thing that I think is really beautiful here is that you know, not to be cliche or miss the eye or anything like that, but there is a hero in all of us, right? And I think that that's sort of laid out here pretty well.
And can I, not to go too much on a tangent, I don't want to keep you too long, but I mean, going back to this point around someone like H.L. Mitchell existing in a context and environment, you know, where he could flourish in the left, and going back to this idea of, you know, organizing being fun and, you know, in a way raunchy or whatever. And I think this goes back to like why an issue like cancel culture is actually important. And I don't mean that in the sense of like a show getting canceled or whatever, but I mean in the sense of like a stifling environment where an ordinary person who again hasn't gone to the grad school seminar when they learn the thing they're supposed to say and don't come as like a perfect left robot, an environment where they don't feel comfortable to speak or like are afraid they're going to make a mistake or say the wrong thing. And I think that actually is, I don't want to overstate it. I'm not saying everyone on the left or every organization at all times is doing this, but I think it is a problem. And it's like I don't think people are quite realizing where a lot of ordinary working people just don't see themselves in these kinds of organizations. It's almost a very like Puritan lifestyle. And like, I mean, you mentioned the Mizaki article, and, you know, for people that don't know, you know, I mean, just talked about like how he created this, you know, bowling league thing. And like part of the draw was like people went there and they got fucked up and everyone was fucking each other. And like, it was really fun. And like, it was kind of an important organizing tool, but I could just imagine like trying to do that in a left space. And like, again, I keep thinking of the word Puritan, just like this very like anti-fun, don't make a dirty joke. And like, it's a problem. It really is a problem.
They politicize the fun, and everything you do is a political act of rebellion to the point where, you know, it's kind of what Norm was talking about with gooning, which again, I'm
Jesus
not
Christ.
very excited that, you know what, really, you're joking, me and Tucson were joking about that. I was like, you know what pissed me off about, or I was talking to Gene Boslan about this. I was like, it's not that the clip went viral, it's that everybody was afraid to give us props. I was fucked up. They were like, this is because you're trying to make this thing that isn't political at all a revolutionary act? It's like, look, dude, if you want to slap ham for 24 to 48 hours, that's not politics. That's amazing and painful, but it's not politics, right? And that to me is what you're talking about, Paul, where now these exploits that are just kind of wild stories of a handful of people, and it's kind of what regular ass people do. You're hanging out all the time, you know, going out and having a good time. It can just be part of what you do. But that's back to what, when Varn is on here, we always talk about this. We need to have socialist bowling leagues and and little league baseball and stuff like that. But that almost seems like it's too foreign for so many people.
Well, you know, just like on that, like I want to add, like, you know, just a couple things, because like this was a union that was very much like class free. These were like normal people in it, but a lot of the organizers were young people who like might not have been Southerners, right? They brought might have even been wealthy, right? And they brought them into these, you know, small rural communities. And I think that, you know, a lot of the members had a lot of fun with getting, you know, sort of offending the sensibilities of these, you know, college educated kids who, you know, were very committed to this kind of thing, you know, but, you know, in a nice kind of like teasing way. I'll tell you, I don't understand how anyone could be shocked by it. A food like grits, but like, you know, there's a funny story about a northerner coming by and being very freaked out by this food that they were eating and things like that, and they, you know, razzed them and you know, fucked around with them. And you know, I could just I could imagine some of the things that they got into being described as quote unquote like problematic. If you were to have like a similar movement today and we were sending like young socialists from LA, New York, Philly, wherever, right? Austin, right? I'll include us here. You know, to these communities that people are like, oh, well, I went there and it was, I really believe in them, but like, oh, you know, their mannerisms were bad or all this kind of stuff. And, you know, they had similar kind of social conventions there of things that you're not supposed to say or you're not supposed to do. I mean, it's the 30s and 40s, right? We know the culture at that time. And you know what I think was really notable about the STFUs, they're like, yeah, well, if you want to fight with us, you got to be one of us, basically, and just sort of, you know, expose these people to a different way of living, a different way of talking, a different way of being. And I think that there would be some struggles with some folks to be able to do that if we had some of our major left organizations sending organizers into any part of the country that's not, you know, quote unquote the coast or whatnot. Yeah.
The comment on the screen, David, is for you. If you eat dusty ass quinoa and hate grits, you might be a racist. So I think it's fair to say, right? That's a fair assessment. Paul, being that your father is actually from the Caribbean, do you eat grits?
I do, yeah, but not because of him. He was not a fan of it. I mean, I don't think he really ate it much.
For me now, boy.
But I eat a lot of fish, you know, and seafood and all that because of him. But yeah, grits, I don't think he's ever ate it much. I don't know what his opinions are of it, to be honest.
He would probably sound like a MAGA dude if someone put grits in front of him. Take this N-word food away from me. There's a boy. Yes, everyone from the Caribbean talks the same.
Everyone's from Jamaica, right.
Everybody is Jamaican. All the Haitians on the show, Jamaican.
Oh, shit.
Speaking of Haitians, it's everyone's favorite Haitian lady, M. Toussaint.
Hello.
Toussaint, I'm assuming you've never had grits in your life because you are Haitian and live in New York.
No, we have grits in Haiti.
I don't believe anyone in New York makes grits.
It's called maï moulin in Creole. We do have grits.
It's grit like?
No, it's grits.
So if I went to your mama house and she'd have a thing of the instant grits, or is she gonna have a thing of the male?
Yeah.
She's gonna have, it's not gonna be instant.
Oh, she's got to take it that way, huh?
Yeah.
Jesus,
gotta go a long way.
Jesus, walking around with the basket on the head. Getting real National Geographic in the Toussaint household. Well,
I don't
look,
know what takes place in your brain.
racism. Paul has to go. David, thank you. And Paul, thank you guys for hanging out with us.
Of course.
Wherever you're watching the show or listening to the show, there's links in the description to David's article. And I'm hoping that we can get Paul back on and talk about his article soon.
Yeah, I have another one coming out tomorrow too. I think will be of interest.
My God, you need to just chill out. Just go do normal shit. Stop writing so much. You people make me feel like I don't do enough with my life. Thank you guys so much.
Well, just really fast before I go, just want to let people know the folks at Working People's Pod are doing a fundraiser right now for the folks, the families in East Palestine. So that's on their YouTube channel. I'm going to be on with some really great folks, I think around 4 Eastern, 3 Central. So if you didn't get enough of me today, once you're finished here, pop over to Working People's Pod. They're doing a 12-hour live stream raising money for the folks in East Palestine. So
just
sure
feed them. We're feeding you more, Griscom. Just feed
force feeding.
David, take care, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, friend.
Take care, David.
Peace. Tucson.
Yeah, man. I like your patriotic shirt today.
Oh. Ben Burgess is coming over in a little bit.
All right, we get to see Ben's arm.
No, he'll be here after the show. I think we're gonna go to Tijuana.
Okay.
Me and Ben never ventured north while he was here. And since me and Shaka Kani have been going, and me and Kenzo went, and me and Alex Michel, the director of Kayfabe, went. So I told Ben, I was like, dude, you have to go to TJ. So he's all excited to go to TJ.
Nice.
I did call him last night, and we had a long talk about the border wait, which is insane right now. It's like 3 hours if you leave at 3 in the morning.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right on a Saturday.
Did you watch any of the show?
I did. I watched most of it.
What do you think?
Awesome. Who knew being in the union was so much fun? You get shot at. Sleep with people's wives. Go bowling.
I do want to start the show with this. Our favorite rapper has a new video. So again, if you guys, this is what we do in the champagne room. So the first hour of the show is for the viewing audience. I hate people say they put everything behind a paywall now. No, we don't. The first hour is always free. This is now the champagne room. Should I even play the champagne room music? You know what? Let's do that. We never.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that right there. This is now we're entering the champagne room.
Champagne every night. Is it a Bud Light or a top shelf scotch or other liquor? What is their drink selection like? Champagne every night. Would you want to sit in a club with a frumpy recluse with a bad attitude? So here are the ways to identify a whale. With these elements in place, you create your ultimate signature atmosphere, also known as the champagne room.
I just want to read this comment because this is the greatest land acknowledgement I've ever read. This is from Kushlook, and this is such a champagne room comment. I'd like to acknowledge we are holding this live stream on stolen alt-right gamer bro land.
This is true. It's true.
Welcome to the champagne room, everyone. Also, welcome to the Twitch viewing audience. Marcus rated. We still have a good handful of people still here from Twitch. So
Sweet.
this is what we do. Sometimes we have serious conversations in T and I. But just don't white explain. So the conversations in the champagne room, sometimes I get serious. Sometimes people make fun of me because I get too serious and then depress the shit out of everybody. I'm going to try not to depress the shit out of everybody. But before we even talk about anything, our favorite rapper has a new video.
He does.
No, not that video, not that rapper. Like our literal favorite rapper. We're not saying that in jest. There's a female rapper. She's doing something I find so interesting, right? When people say you don't need a budget, you don't need crazy effects and everything. This is literally just a camera phone and ingenuity. What this young lady is doing is so interesting and funny and cool. I was telling Toussaint, she to me is a new version of Missy Elliott. Really clever. Like I love what she's doing. I don't understand it, but that's even why it's cooler. So, and I don't know her name. You know her name, Toussaint?
No, I can't tell by her face.
Okay, so here's is it.
I'ma show you how to make a pound cake. Make a pound cake. I'ma show you how to make a pound.
Wow.
I don't know what the point is, but this is a take on Pulp Fiction.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. With the
It's the what do you call it? The suitcase, the briefcase. What's in the briefcase that the whole movie's about.
that's clever.
So, yeah, right? I want to know if they actually I want to know if they actually make the pound cake. Because what's funny is, I think I told you they had another video where they were both in the bed with the matching booties,
Mm-hmm.
and then Meemaw pulls out the mixer.
Right.
And that's the big thing. It's always the mixer, the hand mixer. Like she's ready to go. They're going to show you how to do it, but they never show you how to do it.
Love it.
Love it. Love it. The literal favorite rapper.
Yes.
When we say
That other
favorite,
rapper.
the other rapper. Oh, Jesus. The other rapper is just.
What can you say?
He went on a bit of a rant,
He
and he
did.
let people live stream it.
He did.
Why? Is that hubris?
I just feel like if he asks you to live stream it, you say no.
And we have the footage, right?
We do.
Is it in our list? Did you send it to me?
You sent it to me.
I sent you Kanye talking about his Jewish doctor.
Ah, yeah, that was the short clip.
That was a short clip. That's my favorite Kanye clip. He was a Jew. Where Kanye turns into a Jew when he talks about the Jewish doctor. He turns into a... Okay, here it is. Kanye West has a new album out, and
I don't think it dropped just yet.
his daughter's on it, apparently. Did you know that?
North.
North. He has two daughters?
I think Saint is a girl. One of them's a girl. No, Saint is a boy, I think. He is another girl. There's little ones that
Like-
apparently North doesn't talk to.
What?
Her younger siblings.
But
She
they're
has
all,
no
are they all
interest
from
in-
Kim Kardashian?
Yeah.
Why does she talk to her? I'm so confused.
She doesn't talk. She doesn't have any interest in her younger siblings.
Is that what happens when Kanye is your dad?
Maybe.
You just grow up to be an unbelievable doucher.
She's known for being unapologetically honest.
What?
Yeah.
That means asshole.
Kim is trying to get her to temper that or just deliver it nicely.
Anyone that keeps it real, this is the person to watch out for. And this person exists in every racial group, every social strata. I keep it real. I'm just honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have time for any drama.
Mm.
All you are is drama, and you're an asshole because
Yeah.
you are so much drama. I'm just being honest. You know, hey, just live. If people that also the same person, they live their own truth. I live in my truth. I'm speaking my truth. If you're speaking your truth, if you're unapologetically honest, if you're just keeping it real, and you don't want drama, that's the cocktail for douchebaggery.
Yeah.
Right? Winspirit says, don't trust a toddler with fuck you money. Well, you just described Kanye West.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're like, hey, just being honest here, whatever you're going to say after that is going to be an insult. Can I be honest with you right now? No. Talk to me like you do those white people at work.
Ooh.
I need you to not be honest with me right now. Talk to me like I'm your male boss.
There you go.
Don't be honest with me, okay? Because whatever you're going to say is going to be a massive insult. Right?
It's true.
Can we be frank for a second here?
All right, Frank.
I really hope you Leslie Nielsen someone like that.
So stupid.
Like, you can be honest without being an asshole. And you know, we've all been the asshole, right?
Yeah.
We've all been a little too honest. I am single for a reason. Right? A little too honest sometimes. And you learn. But Kanye is living his truth.
Yes, he is.
And that means he's living a lie.
It does.
He's just living somewhere, and it's just fantasy land. He loves it there. And when you are famous, and we've talked about this before on the show, and let's bring this up again, because I think this is also a sad state of where we are when it comes to cultural production of anything new and interesting. I never grew up in a world where rappers that are literally older than me, Kanye's like a year older, I think, are still relevant.
Right.
Especially one without a movie career or a TV show. Kanye's never had a TV show.
No.
And if he's been in a movie, it's just been probably as himself.
Yeah.
So here's a guy that literally is famous because of his music for one, and controversy for two. Now more so controversy than maybe the music. And we can say that controversy starts when George Bush doesn't like black people during a massive fundraising event for Hurricane Katrina. And that's the Kanye that people look at as some sort of savior of Black America. Like that was the thing that had to be said to wake people up. And whenever I think about that, whenever I hear people try to defend Kanye and go, you know, that's my Kanye. I'm like, well, he needed to say that for you to get all fired up? Like, really? You really thought before that George Bush and Richard Pryor were like fucking hanging out at Camp David, doing the ham bone shit and fucking like, what did you think?
Okay.
Who do you think Kanye and who do you think George Bush was?
Sure.
And what happens when Kanye does blow up during the era of the first black president? All he does is brag about how adjacent to power he always is.
Yes. And the president called him an idiot.
Which one? Because he's been around for a few.
That's
Bush,
true.
right?
Obama called him an idiot.
And then he went to go be friends with Donald Trump. And everyone acts like, well, this is Kanye during a mental break. And when Kanye said George Bush doesn't like black people with a very frightened look on his face, and then said he was going to donate a bunch of money, we all knew that this was the leader that we needed. He wasn't. He was the hero Gotham needed. I was like, man, you wherever you live, brother, it sucks because I've never needed Kanye for anything, unless he was my neighbor, maybe, and like, oh, you have any like garlic? You don't have any, and I really wanted to make this dish.
Need some sugar.
I feel like Kanye West would not have real sugar at his house.
That's probably true.
Right? That's why I asked for garlic, because I knew you like, hey, Kim, guys got any sugar? No real okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah, it's not going to happen at Kanye's house. Garlic, they're going to have garlic. They're definitely going to have garlic. They're going to have ginger at their house. They're gonna have fancy teas. Sugar, maybe not. David Russell says mental illness is no excuse. Seems like Ye is just a loser. You get to live in a world when you're that famous. You get to live in a world where everything you say, there's always someone there to be like,
Exactly.
And we call them yes, but people say yes men. It's like, yeah, those people go away real quick though. When you're not famous anymore. The hangers on. But I'm talking about people like managers and agents and people that own brands that make money off this gentleman and record company execs. Like there's a lot of people in the halls of power that'll okay, sure. So Kanye, what is he doing at his house? Are these his neighbors or like people he found in the VIP room?
They look like VIP room people.
They look like people that like all of them look like they blew someone to get in there.
They're all kind of pretty and ready for a camera.
Yeah. So I really feel like these are like the people that are in the VIP room that know someone that knows someone that knows someone. The LA VIP room people, right? Like my best friend is the cousin of Common's assistant's hairdresser, and they got me in.
Look at that.
Like that level of association.
Working those connections.
Right? Somebody called him Conway West. I wish Kanye West did a whole album of Conway Twitty covers. I would buy that in a minute. That would be the greatest. It's been a long time. I love Conway Twitty.
Do you?
No one can sing a song about fucking somebody else's girlfriend like Conway Twitty and make you feel bad for him. Hello,
Jeez.
darling. When I hear Conway Twitty, or if I see a video of him with that fucking dude, knowing he got so much Murrays in his shit,
Gosh.
squeezing his fat ass into that fucking sequin ass powder blue suit, talking about banging somebody's wife. I'm like, Conway Twitty is a dirty motherfucker. Someone says his hair fucking rules. Hell yeah, it does. Love Conway Twitty. If you don't like Conway Twitty, then don't tell me about gangster rap or any kind of rap you listen to, because you can listen to them both. It's okay. Dusty said dude was lucky to have that voice. Yeah, he's a goofy looking dude. Always talking about running up in somebody's house. Kanye duet with Loretta Lynn. That version of country is like my favorite shit.
Right.
Between me doing this show, my neighbor not knowing what I do, and like blaring old ass Hank Williams, I'm sure my neighbor thinks that I'm some sort of weirdo.
You got the shirt.
Hello,
Got the country
darling.
shirt. I don't know. My neighbor, he blasts country and he wears country shirts. But we're in Mexico.
Oh, that is like the thing to wear down here. Because remember, I told you cows. I made a video for my young son, so he can see how crazy it is out here. Because sometimes, like, I don't have an animal because there's so many just stray dogs that roam around here.
Mm-hmm.
So I can like dog treats and stuff in my car, and sometimes I'll like throw some dog treats out and just like play with dogs when I'm on my way home.
Jeez.
And so I was doing that. There was like a husky was loose, big ass husky. So I was like feeding this husky and playing with the husky, and then all of a sudden, some horses just rode by. So
You went to go play with the horses?
Nah, them horses be like some thug shit, man. They be on some thug shit. So here's Kanye West. Conway West is the album that we want. That's the one the people want. So Kanye Way is yelling about Zionists and hospitals.
Colonizers, nigga. The French own 80% of the banks in Africa, nigga. That's why I just met with MBS, nigga, head of Saudi. Nigga, we don't have to.
And what did you do at the meeting? Did you yell at him like this? All
Did you
cokey and
ask him
shit?
about banks?
Did you? Can you imagine Kanye? Is his meeting with MBS like my meeting with Jack Dorsey?
Aw, imaginary.
No, I was in a room with him. I said hi.
That's true, you did.
So that was my extent of Jack Dorsey.
I like Jack Dorsey.
He seemed friendly, but still. Hello.
Hello.
I didn't know who he was.
That's even better.
But
He's that kind of guy too.
yeah, he's just a smiley white man. Well, you can tell when someone's important because they have that look like, I don't really have to do shit.
Yeah.
Is Kanye a cokehead? This seems cokey, but it also seems manic.
Yes.
And those two things are not mutually exclusive. So I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it. Like, I mean, just listen.
About it and shit, nigga. Okay, it's 60 million us in America, 60 million Jews in the world. 50% of our.
Like, really?
Not true. Not true.
Where do you get that statistic?
Just Pearly Things is where he gets his statistics.
Where did he get that statistic from? I'm gonna just start saying random shit. I'm gonna just go around and start saying random shit to people. There's 60 million black people in New York today.
Mm-hmm.
All of them
in
live in
New York.
projects. They all live in projects. You know how many Jews there are? 7.
Somebody says he gets his stats from Nick Fuentes.
Jesus Christ. There's this wonderful thing in your pocket called the internet.
Yeah.
And if you're going to say crazy shit like that, you can go, let me just double check before I do this rant. Give me 1 second, guys. I'll rant in a minute. Hold on, guys. Just give me a second. Black people in the U.S. 60 million. Like, that's all you have to do. That's all you have to do.
This guy's not going to check the internet. This guy's wearing the crest of Germany.
But do you understand that this barbershop logic? All you have to do is be like, that's not true, nigga. What are you looking up? I don't know. The stats. Just the Census Bureau has statistics.
Right.
They not counting half breeds, nigga. What?
You're not counting half breeds. They didn't count Paul. My nigga counts. I fucks with you, Paul. You count. You count.
Nigga, I'm counting octoroons too, nigga. What? 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 Does Sean King count that 60 million? I'm gonna start a band called Barbershop Logic. Dude, nigga, I'm counting Puerto Ricans, nigga. What, nigga? They just niggas that speak Spanish, nigga. What?
Count Dominicans, they just niggas that wear sandals.
What is he talking about? So no one is saying that's not correct, because when you go unhinged like that and you just start saying words and names, nigga, I went with MBS and nigga, what MBS, nigga? 6 million. I was there's 60 million Saudis in the peninsula.
Peninsula.
I'm counting Aussies because they just white Irish.
That's funny.
Oh my God. It would have been better if he was like, there's 60 million niggas with good hair in America. Just like,
somebody said we have to count Varn.
we have to count.
I count Varn. I fucked with him. It's my nigga right
Vaughn,
there.
nigga. Sean King, nigga. MBS told me that it was niggas, but not really. Kushlik says Kindyman. This is when Ibrahim X Kendi descends from the heavens into
Right
Kanye's
down.
room, like fucking Kendi descends from the sky and he goes,
No, my brother.
Basically.
that's exactly what happens. Kushlik says, I'm summoning it. So again, this is the champagne room. There's a lot of inside jokes we have in the champagne room. And one of them is if you say Ibrahim X Kendi's name, it's like Candyman. So he is the Candyman can.
Mm-hmm.
Kanye talking about he met MBS. I think Kanye saw any brown man with a beard.
Oh man. He saw Drake.
He saw Drake.
He thought Drake was MBS.
Nigga, I was at MBS. He lived next door to me. Nigga, what?
He live in Calabasas.
Nigga, MBS. MBS dropping fire 12-bar verses, nigga. Yes. Fucking dropped a hot 16 on me and then fucking went to a Toronto Raptor game. I know MBS. What you talking about? I meet with him all the time. Kanye, that's just Drake.
Kanye.
Drake in a very racist Halloween costume, Kanye.
It's Drake in a scarf.
It's not even one of those Palestinian ones. Just a regular,
scarf.
Just Drake in a scarf. So Kanye gets to go on these unhinged rants. And what's funny is that someone's going to do a think piece about this. There's going to be shows that talk about how Kanye is like danger. Give a fuck what he says. Does anyone take this a-hole seriously? Like, really?
Some people do.
It took Donald Trump 40 years to be relevant and to get a show where he was the king of the world to become president. 40 years. He played the long game and he won.
Mm-hmm.
He attempted to run for president like Kanye West, and everybody laughed it off in 2000?
Yep.
As part of the libertarian adjacent party. So if you're really afraid that Kanye West is attempting to play the long game, how serious are we taking him? Again, Donald Trump, unlike Kanye West, his media appearances were smaller and less controversial. He stayed behind the scenes for the majority of his 40 years. When I say behind the scenes, I mean, there's definitely going to show up. There's going to be a piece about him being this rich playboy and how he's got all this money. He's got casinos. He's got airplanes. He's got everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's uncircumcised.
No, my brother.
Hey.
Because of who? Because of the hospitals.
Well, okay, so this,
We don't own no hospitals, man. We don't own no hospitals.
This is Kanye talking about the private ownership of hospitals.
Death is abortion. 25% of us go to raise one hand if you don't know one nigga in prison, one nigga got locked up, and one nigga poor. Raise your hand if you don't know.
Did somebody go, ooh? Like that was cool?
That was mic drop.
What?
He made it so that nobody could raise their hand.
But that was someone said, oof. I would have raised my hand anyway and spoke at the same time. Like, hey, this sounds like bullshit.
Instead, they're like, this MF spitting.
Oh my God. Someone says, how many hospitals has he built? Well, you are asking trick questions.
You don't know one person got abortion. Now take.
I said, I got an abortion. Fuck yeah. That's awesome.
No one person had an abortion.
One person yelled out, I got an abortion. Barbershop Logic feature mic drop. Yes, Matt Gilbert. That is Kanye's new band.
That's not a bad name for a rapper, mic drop. Not horrible.
Dude. Hey, this is where the Kanye speech gets into the most beautiful piece of nonsensical fuckery. Like, I love this so much that if he was there, I would have hugged him. I would have hugged him, and I would have been like, this, you, my friend, have officially, you're the mayor of Crazy Town.
You've outdone yourself.
You've outdone yourself, Kanye. Watch this.
Now I tell you, if it was in a Jewish mother on Friday with no fucking, everybody raised their hands. So, but wait a second. But who got? But wait a second. Who make the hospitals though?
What?
Catholics?
I don't know.
Is he going for Catholics now?
What is
Right.
like serious, dude? Kanye, what is the state? Maybe sometimes private business, investment capital. What kind of hospitals are we talking about? Are we talking about the county hospital or like Cedars-Sinai universities?
Who got the hospitals? These are Zionists, nigga.
Yes, hospitals are part of the Zionist plot to destroy brown America. Somebody says the Shriners. Strong says he's no longer talking like white pride. Kanye, hello, darling. Have you missed me? It's been a long time. The Knights Templar make hospitals. These Zionists want to put me in a hospital. Okay, here it comes.
This is what I'm trying to tell you. Jesus Christ, Hitler, yay. Third.
That's all you need, right? To make the world a better. You need Jesus, Hitler, Kanye. Trifecta.
No, my
What do you mean?
Right.
Healthcare is a science plot.
What do you mean?
This is also why there's no sugar at Kanye's house.
Yeah, well,
Right?
he can stand to get some sugar then.
Dude, you try to go there, you're like it's Kim knocking on your door, right? Jason, man, I just want to make the kids Kool-Aid. And then part of me is saying, it's not a porn, it's real life. Just give her the sugar. It's not a porn, it's real life. Just give her the sugar. I would talk to Kim Kardashian like dudes be talking to women at the strip club. Kim, why are you with him? You're better than this.
Oh God. She ain't with him.
That's right. She's out. She got free.
She's free.
So can I meet Kim Kardashian in LA and date her?
No.
God damn it.
You got too many kids for that. She got too many kids for that.
Maybe she would look at me as like, oh, you're the father figure that they need. You're around Kanye's age and size.
You wear country plaid shirts.
You're not afraid to say controversial things. Can you imagine if Kim Kardashian had good politics and she used her stuff for good? I mean, she kind of does. She did get a few women out of prison that were in on some trumped up charges.
She tried. Yeah.
She did.
No, she did. She tries.
Oh, you said she tries.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when she was going to go to law school and then she like got the syllabus and was like, ew, what is this reading? Forget adding yourselves as heads to the Marxist flag. Add yourself to the Hitler Trinity. Like that dude, the Shining Path dude, added himself to the Marxist flag. He just threw himself on there. Kanye.
Party. Sponsor that, nigga. Bring the sponsorships to that.
Who said yeah?
Just, it's sad.
Who said yeah? This is the same person that yelled out, I had an abortion.
I guess so, right? He doesn't even know these people.
Who? I told you I dated a woman. We went on a few dates. And she was like a big Kanye fan. And she was a Kanye defender. to the point where it would get like the conversations get a little bit like, you can't be serious. I kind of want to like hit her up and play this.
Damn.
Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're fine. Here, this is your God.
I mean, this is your God. This is why they call it a cult. To be a Kanye fan at this point, they call it a cult. You're in a cult.
Because there's going to be some niggas that feel exactly like me. I don't give a fuck, nigga. I'm 7. I don't give a fuck about life or death. I get visitation with my kids. I ain't got no say so.
Why is Kanye West, a literal billionaire, trying to talk like me? Like, I just drove about 1,200 miles to hang out with my kid for a very short amount of time. And Kanye is talking like me and him are the same dude. We're not. What do you mean?
Visitation.
What? And why are you yelling about this in front of strangers? These are not things you should be yelling. This is why I don't think it's just cocaine.
These niggas is colonizers, nigga. The French own 80% of the banks in Africa, nigga.
80%.
Who is he talking about?
France.
He means like French as in like just all French people, or France as a country, or
It's the rich French people, bankers.
jeez. Like, y'all got to stop letting Kanye just do this with a camera in front of him. And you know what? Look,
the full rant is like 15 minutes.
Yeah. And he streamed it, right?
Yeah, he had it streamed. At one point, it seemed like he was going to throw the person streaming out, but it was the person next to the person streaming.
It was a man. This is next to the man. It's the next to the man that called my piccolo player motherfucker. Please stand up.
Okay.
Only real OGs know that joke. It's an old Robin Harris joke. About how the late Tim Tiny Lester, he said, took him to a ghetto church in South Central.
God.
And he said the church was so ghetto, it didn't have an organ player, it had a piccolo player.
I remember this show.
And he said the piccolo player was trash. And he said the church was so ghetto, somebody yelled out, "Piccolo player's a motherfucker." And then he said the preacher then stopped the church band and choir, and then they said that the preacher was a kind of thug. So the preacher yelled out, "The man called my piccolo player motherfucker, please stand up." And he said everybody just sat down still. And he said, Tiny looked over and said, "Don't say shit. That nigga got a gun. He's shooting motherfuckers." So the preacher goes, "Well, the man that's sitting next to the man that called my piccolo player motherfucker, please stand up." And he said everybody's still standing still. And it goes on for a while.
Yeah.
Your man is next to the man. It's next to the man. It's next to the man. But look up Robin Harris piccolo player. I played that way too many times at 11 years old. My mom bought that cassette. And I took the cassette out of her car. That's what I used to listen to on the way to school. And I took the cassette out of her car and just played it just ad nauseum in my room, and then would do Robin Harris impersonations in school. And here we are today.
Tiny bald Jason at 11 years old.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Steady diet of that and like Eddie Murphy Raw and Delirious. It's a different time.
Different time.
The 80s and 90s were a different time.
That's true.
Storm says you played it on the show once. I did, and that show got pulled down.
Mhm.
I believe Paramount or Warner owns it, and they pulled it. Those MFers. We have more. But what? How do you guys feel about this? Right?
Oh, somebody's mad at you.
For mocking Kanye's mild, not even mild, his kind of skewed understanding of French colonialism. You can be mad. That's fine. I don't know what you want me to do about that.
80% of the banks.
What statistic did he yell out also? The majority of black people die in abortions.
50%.
Was it 50%?
Half.
That's the stat I was hoping that was part of the clip. I was like, where are you how do you what? Huh?
No,
What?
I don't even know.
How does that even work? I was like, dude, I don't get it, brother. I'm not getting it. Between Kanye West and Charleston White.
Oh man.
Look, after watching Kanye West, I think we have to watch this to cleanse our palates.
Oh boy.
There was like one thing I found. What was the first church video we watched? Was that when you weren't on the show and we watched the Japanese praise break?
It was Japanese praise break.
Ever since Japanese praise break, I get a good amount of church stuff. Also, I get a good amount of funeral revelations. I don't know if that's a new thing, and I don't know if that's fake. Do you think the funeral revelations are real? Because there is a lot more live streaming of funerals.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
The funeral revelations are just like, I get it. You're upset, but is it really the time? Have you seen the one where the girl is going, my mama didn't fuck with you because you was talking shit about her when she was alive? I was like, God.
See, you want to do that at a funeral.
Kinda.
But you don't.
It's just not the time.
It's just not the time.
And I don't know. At your funeral, I promise I won't do that.
Thank you. It's good to have that promise in this is in the bank.
This is not a funeral. This is just a church. And at this church, they are shouting, which is when the Holy Spirit hits you and takes over your feet. And it runs through your body, right? You know about shouting, right, Tucson? You've been to a church that shouts.
I've seen it.
So I'm going to play this video a couple times. It's not very long, but just look at a different person each time, and you will discover so much in this video. So check it out. Oh! shocked when someone says I get to have sex.
Oh my gosh.
No, my brother.
Hey, shut up.
It's hard to see it, but there's a pair of glasses on the stage.
The woman shouted her wig off.
She sure did.
And then the bass player kicks it out of the way.
Let me take care of this.
Watch this.
That's enough. I gotta catch my butt.
Just dab on him.
But I
Look, bam, wig off. Look at the bass player. Look at the bass player. She doesn't lose the groove.
you better pay them.
That nigga with the tambourine.
Mm.
Someone says church revival, punk mosh pit, same things. Yes.
Sure.
Yes. My God. What do you think about the wigs? So what's more fucked up is the woman next to the woman whose wig fell off.
Mm-hmm.
She starts shaking her head hella hard. Be like, aha. Your wig ain't shit.
And you realize they're all wearing wigs?
They're all wearing wigs. Look at this showing off. Look at these two showing off. And look at this. She had to come in there and show off some more. Woo.
That's enough. I gotta catch my butt.
Dab on him. Dab on him, me, mom. If your grandma ain't never dabbed on Satan, have you ever really been to church?
I guess you have not. I guess you have not. Dab on Satan.
Has your grandma ever dabbed on the competition?
Man, that lady, she did this dance move. She stood on her ankles. She stood on her ankles, man, and then hopped up and he kept on dancing some more.
Tucson. This is an old clip. I've seen this before a while back. I don't know if we showed this on the show, but it's one of my favorite clips. It's this clip where a news crew is eating Cajun food. And I think it's in LA. And the newscaster, white guy, takes a bite of this food, and his reaction is hilarious.
In here too?
Dirty rice.
Dirty rice, shrimp Alfredo, smothered turkey leg. I'm almost drooling. Rice?
What?
Someone says, I didn't know this was possible. Now, I'm going to show you a video that explains why this man dropped his fork.
Mm.
Damn, these niggers can cook. That in that one bite, that man is now about to go try to abolish everything. The police, slavery, other white people like him. He's about to abolish everything.
Mm.
Black soap finna be in the house.
Oh my gosh.
Dad, why do you have Jet magazine all over the place?
Jet magazine.
Do you leave your wife after that? I don't know.
Wow.
Looking and acting like Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden's too gone to even know he was eating. The spirit of John Brown entered his body. Dad, Amazon delivered your dashiki. No, son, what I'm saying is white fragility doesn't go far enough.
Abraham X. Kendi doesn't go far enough.
It's not far enough. What we need is radical liberation. That man is giving out reparations to every black person he sees, only if they're in the kitchen, though.
We need a redistribution of wealth to Negroes who can cook.
He's just walking in all over South Central, just going in chicken joints like Mr. Beast, taking out home loans to add extra fryers. Oh, shit. One bite changed this man's entire outlook on race politics. One fucking bite. And I'm going to show you why. Did you see the video, Toussaint, of why this man is? Did I show you that video?
I believe I did.
Hold on, let me find it. I really hope I sent it to you. Oh, please tell me I sent it to you. I sent you so much shit.
You did.
I gotta stop. Side note, why did you say I can't get with Tatiana Ali?
Because she looks like your daughter.
Wow. Again.
No, my brother.
That is gross. And she's not Asian.
She's Indian.
No, she's not.
She's something.
She's something. Yeah, she sure is something. Why are you hating on the me and Tatiana Ali? That way, if me and Tatiana Ali and my daughter all walked around, they'd be like, oh, that's obviously your mother.
Oh, God.
No? This is why this man took that bite and understood everything. He understood why his life was a lie. I don't know who this woman is. And I don't know why this was done.
A raw chicken thigh. I'm going to show you how to roast it. Really just take the chicken, put it on a baking tray, salt.
Just touching the salt with all that raw chicken hand. Now, there was a cut there. She could have washed her hands. Let's just say, for all intents and purposes, she washed her hands. This is a really nice looking kitchen. She's got a gas stove. Right? That's a nice kitchen. You can make some good shit in that kitchen. So she wants to show you her quick recipe. She lightly salts the chicken.
That's it. I'm preheating my oven to 425. It usually takes like 50 minutes to an hour, so I'll check back soon. It's been like 45 minutes. Let's take it out. We're gonna put it back in for a little longer because it's not done.
The chicken that you got today on Instagram it didn't look raw. It really did.
It was
there's blood coming out of it. Oh.
What do these people do for a living to have these houses, or do they just live with their parents?
To have these houses with these kitchens they don't know how to use.
Yeah. Are they just going into Airbnbs and just doing this shit for the views? And they go back to their hovel in fucking Highland Park? Or do they really live in? Because this is a pretty barren looking kitchen. So either you just moved everything off your kitchen counter for the video, or you just live that barren of a life. Now, the way the chicken was seasoned, I understand there's not a lot of stuff on the counter, right? Yeah. But most people just have stuff, right? Chips, fruit, a vegetable or two, some bullshit. Someone says rental. I wouldn't doubt if it was a rental. Kushla says 49 million Jews, 49 million factory farm chickens killed every week. You do the math. Someone says 50 minutes for a chicken thigh. What you guys didn't notice was the chicken was frozen.
Oh, she started from frozen.
That chicken was frozen.
Because I did not understand any of what happened.
Someone says, who has a chicken thigh as a snack?
This is the truth.
Just one in the oven.
I'm just making one at a time. Just one.
Just one frozen chicken thigh and leg. There we go.
Oh, wow! Listen, maybe the last time I cooked my chicken, it was a little bit underdone, okay? But
rare chicken is deadly. Rare chicken is deadly.
Yes,
I repeat, rare chicken is deadly.
I'll live. Let's see. Someone commented on my last video that looks like the chicken is still clucking. Okay, 172. It's like basically how it was cooked yesterday.
You gotta make sure the thermometer goes all the way in the
It
chicken.
did!
Sure.
Do you want me to check it again?
You're known for your raw chicken.
No, I'm not.
That is not it.
I got a bad spot.
Oh, God, that just looks gross.
It really does.
It looks like a science experiment. Rare chicken as opposed to common chicken. Jan Clements has the green face throw up emoji. I think Jan Clements is from New Orleans.
Yep.
If Jan Clements is actually from New Orleans, this is like a crime. Is it a crime?
Yes, it is.
Like, this is so sad for her. She's about to start blaring Sade in the fucking. I won't pretend. I can't hate you. Jeremy Logan says they setting white people back 200 years. 200 years? It's some caveman shit. The fuck
That's true.
Like life, raw chicken, if it doesn't kill you, will only make you stronger.
Here's hoping for her sake.
Jesus. Someone says, how do you go through your life and not know how to use your stove? I don't know, but that thermometer is just filled with salmonella.
That's in. 175. Verified. This is cooked. Best part is obviously the skin.
Ew. That looks like a human skin.
It does.
The reason why this place is so barren is because, much like the dude that was a big fan of Larry Elder, there's just people in the basement.
She might have people in the basement.
She might have people in the basement.
She might have lampshades made out of faces.
If you cook your chicken like that, you've taken a bite out of a person. She's bit that dude's penis, and not in a like cute, fun-loving way, but in a "no, I'm hungry" kind of way.
No, I'm hungry. It's here, so am I.
Yeah. Your dick and this chicken skin looks exactly the same. So, what do you expect me to do, fucking Filbert?
So good.
Eat that skin.
Disclaimer, I am not a chef. I just really love food. I know that I want a lot of protein and I know that I want a lot of fat. So since chicken is relatively low fat, I just add some butter in.
That was a scoop of butter.
Chicken and butter.
Caleb says, I appreciate that Jason knows that they're loving penis bites.
Why didn't you just cook it with the butter?
That would have been better.
These are good questions.
That would have been so much better. I first thought it was like pineapples or something. But
There was a whole pat of butter.
I've
with
never
one.
seen somebody take a pat of butter. She needs to stick to peanut butter. Poor Jan Clements again, just crying, bumping Sade. I can't hate you.
I have tried. This one McFizzle says his stomach is bubbling.
Oh, someone wrote a comment that was watching the first hour. I won't. Well, Lee, I hope you enjoy the first hour, because by the time you get to hour 2, we really go off the rails.
Yes, we do. Someone said MF's raised on chicken nuggets. I can see that.
I could see that. I could see that.
How do you make those?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, so since we did that, I want to take that disgusting feeling out of your mouth.
That's what she said.
She did. I want to take I want to take that out of your mouth, and I want to show you something that should make you feel well. Should we end? We've been going for 2.5 hours. Should we end now?
We can end.
We have to make people feel a little bit better, right?
We'll end on an up note.
On an up note? Okay. Wait a minute. Let me make sure we can end on an up note, because there's just too much funny shit. 2 funny notes to end on.
I knew you were gonna go for 2. I knew you couldn't do one. I knew you couldn't do one.
Because I kind of want to ask the relationship question.
Oh my God.
So leave the relationship one alone.
Leave the relationship one.
Leave that for Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay. So I watch a lot of fight videos on Instagram and YouTube, and there's a lot of fight tutorial stuff. More so form, steps, workout routines. Back in the day, if you were getting pushed around, it's kind of like that King of the Hill episode. Someone told you to go to the Y and take like a martial arts or boxing class. Or if you read like weird magazines, like there's like ninja magazines and all these like martial arts magazines. There'd always be a person, advertising a fight video. Like, I watch this video, and for $49.99, I will turn you into an assassin in an hour and a half.
Oh boy.
And I know you didn't watch this. I'm sure you saw this. Is like, I'm not watching. Stupid.
I don't think I did watch this one.
This video is like one of these videos where look, this is what's going to happen to you in a situation. This is what you need to have. This is how you defend yourself. And they always like hit their chest, right? Do shit like that. And they like do the slap thing where they like, like Steven Seagal does it all the time. He slaps somebody upside the head, and they act like the upside the head slap was like, oh my God, I'm disarmed now. Right? So it's like, that was the thing. The punch to their own chest, and then do that out there, and you're like, whoa. Like, see how quick I am? This right there. Right in his eye. And then somebody said in the comments, the eyes are the testicles of the face.
Okay.
So watch this man And me, we're in the same phases of our lives right now. The mustache phase of our life. We feel everybody is like us. So our self-defense techniques are going to be built around the way we defend ourselves. So check this out.
I'm a smoker. A lot of people are smokers. Real quick, he's sticking the finger in the face, cigarette in the eye.
What?
He's not done.
Boom. Automatic response. He snapped his head back. His entire body is open. Any strike you want. Okay? Same thing with the...
Did you see? Did you see? Did you see?
Into the groin. Chest punch.
Someone says, fuck, and I just quit smoking. Cigarette in the eye. What you have to do is put a fucking cigarette out of the man's eye. And look, everything's open. Oh, yeah, you know what else is going to be open? The jail cell. Because you have just committed a felony.
Oh, my God.
My favorite part is this is the fingers going. Look at his fingers going. Bam. Cigarette in the eye.
The old cigarette in the eye trick.
This to me is akin to the you don't want to rile me up. I whoop anybody. I don't care what you know. I don't care what martial art you know. Can you know MMA? You don't want to rile me. I'm like a barracuda possessed by a monkey.
Jesus.
That's what she said.
Right. Monkey. How does that even work?
You don't want to rile me, man, because you stepped me wrong. I'll fucking put a cigarette in your eye, rip your testicles off, and then dangle them in front of you, and then hypnotize you, and then kick you in the ass.
And then
you don't want a piece of me, brother. I'm not afraid. I'll throw this cigarette in your face and mildly annoy you while distracting you quickly enough to punch you in the chest. I'm a lot smaller and it probably won't hurt that much. Bam, then I kick you in the knee. Hoping that your knee is previously injured.
Hoping that your knee is a football injury.
Hoping that your whole football. Oh, I will tear your ACL, brother. I'll tear it all. Your ACL, your MCL, your ACLU. I'll tear it all, motherfucker. You don't want to rile me, man. You don't want a piece of me. Do you see this mustache? You know what it means? I'm a certified pussy eating motherfucker. I will fuck you up, man. That's what they say.
Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you've never been anywhere and seen that fight, instigate it.
No.
Just go try to start it.
Change. He's sticking a finger in your face, right in the eyes.
God.
He threw change. He threw change at him.
He did.
Coach, look, 39 million Jews in the United States and 39 million practicing Taekwondo athletes. You do the math. Schmeckley says your champagne room assignment is to instigate a fight and lose. Everything this man is saying is going to get you murdered. Yeah, Dog says pocket sand. For those that don't know pocket sand, that was Dale Gribble from King of the Hills thing. Pocket sand. He threw change at that man. If you throw even a lit cigarette at somebody, change at somebody, and you are not prepared to follow that up with a bottle to their head, a pool stick to the head, some sort of cutlery to the head or neck, you have just asked for an ass whooping. You signed up to get fucked up. Coach Lick said you got to throw those big 20 peso coins. Those 20 peso coins are heavy. You might bruise. Bad Lefty might have won comment of the day. To quote Gandhi, to be the scene you want to be the scene you want to see on the news. Someone said pocket sand will work. Will work you into taking a forever nap. Dude, I can't stop laughing. Look.
Okay, once again, the response, turn the head away. Okay, I'm a smoker. A lot of people are smokers. Real quick, he's sticking the finger in the face, cigarette in the eye.
The poor NPC is like, fuck, dude, I did this for $50, man. Every time this guy speaks in my face, he singes more of my nostril hairs.
Yeah.
His breath smells like he's been eating cheese and chasing it with black coffee.
Ew.
His mustache smells. So the combination of his mustache and his breath and his clothes. Oh.
The doctor says step 2, discombobulate.
Step 2, discombobulate.
Good answer.
Bad breath attack. Like, you know that man was up all night getting fucked up on a bevy of substances, chasing all of those substances with the king of beers, and then just blowing cigarette smoke and everything else into this poor man's face and pretend kicking him in the nuts. Like, all for $50. This was like the 90s. A dude did this for $50. $50 and like a 6-pack and maybe an 8-ball of shitty Coke.
Boom, automatic response. He snapped his head back. His entire body is open. Any strike you want. Okay? Same thing with the change. He's sticking a finger in your face. Right in the eye.
Right in the eye. Again, the eyes are the testicles of the face.
He's sticking his finger in your face. You retaliate by going above and beyond and escalating the whole thing.
Jimped might have the comment of the day. Venmo and vaping have left today's youth defense. Can you imagine someone just blowing vape smoke in someone's face? The eyes are the testicles of the face. Now that is a TIR shirt I'd buy. We have to have a shirt with mustache guy, and he's just going, the eyes are the testicles of the face. And then he's got a cigarette in his hand or something. Someone make that image so we can make that shirt, the eyes are the testicles of the face. Because that might be the thing that actually helps us. By the way, it's the holiday season. And nothing says you love or hate your family like TIR merchandise. Oh, God. So get the Anglo-pessimism shirt and the eyes of the testicles of the face shirt. That's what we need in America right now, right? All right. So in closing, let's leave on a happy note. And I can't have you guys. I can't do that to y'all. Right? Just leave you with the pocket sand, man. Can't do that. But I can leave you with this feel-good tune. We often talk about the early days of rap music, and someone found it. 1974. And this looks like so much. And earlier in the show today, I don't want to bring it back. Earlier in the show today, we were talking about these labor organizations and how they had regular people. Everybody wasn't a freaking academic. There were people that were illiterate. And they were having fun. It's okay to have fun. And Toussaint had sent me this like video about Puffy and Spotify, or not Puffy, Snoop Dogg and Spotify. And I drove all those hours like straight. I did that thing where you think you're awake and all of a sudden your body just, the power goes out in your body. I was like wide awake. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then the power went out. And then I woke up and there was a 90s documentary on about grunge in Seattle. Because this is on YouTube. So it was just like playing. And I was like, oh man, this Puffy thing got weird. But watching people in spaces like this, and like in, you know, maybe 100 people in a little bitty club somewhere in Seattle, I was like, oh man, that was such a good time. Like you had to go out to find the good time. Right now, the good time, you can find the good time. You can Google it. You can look on YouTube and there's a good time somewhere. There's a concert somewhere. There's a group you like. There's an artist you like. And you can see the concert and it's got professional sound, professional video. I would say the majority of venues that we go into are set up for professional recording, audio and video. If you remember the New York show, they were like, oh, you want to record it? I mean, they charged you for it. I think they want to charge like $1,000 for it. Excuse me. But I was like, whoa. Every venue. It used to be only big ones. Now it's like even these small couple 100-seat ones. So having real experiences is so important. And I found this video and I was like, this, I was falling asleep. I started watching the video and it had me moving. Did you find yourself moving too when you saw the video too?
I did.
So enjoy this. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll be back Tuesday for the holiday party.
Yay.
Yay. So enjoy the early days of hip hop. Also, look at how people are dressed.
Real big clap. All y'all freeze. One more clap. Bust out, please. Woo! Real big clap. Everybody shout. Woo! One more Bust out, please.